Я рада приветствовать всех на виртуальной площадке Русского дома Брюсселя. And I'm very happy to welcome everybody on the virtual platform of the Russian House Brussels Europe. Our event of today will be done in two languages, in Russian and in English, with the simultaneous translation. Сегодня у нас мероприятие на двух языках, на русском и на английском, с синхронным переводом. So those who want to follow us in English, please choose the English track, English language, with the icon of globe in the bottom of your screen. And so you can continue with English language in simultaneous translation. Для тех, кто нас слушать по-русски, либо включите русский трек, нажав на иконку с изображением глобуса внизу справа вашего экрана, либо ничего не делайте, потому что оригинальная дорожка, на которой я сейчас говорю, будет продолжаться на русском языке. So now, when the technical details are explained, I switch in Russian and invite everybody abroad to follow us in English, the language of the second language of our today meeting. Итак, сегодняшняя встреча.
Today's meeting within the project, common project, Russian Innovation Night. So this event will be devoted to the artificial intelligence technologies. And there is another topic we can guess from the name of the title of our event. It's the 350th anniversary of Peter the Great, one of the most important characters of the Russian history. He was the first Russian emperor, the person who changed all the lifestyle in Russia. But today we're going to talk about him from the point of view of innovation and history, because among many reforms implemented by Peter, for me as a philologist, one of the most important is language reform. Peter implemented alphabet reform. He has approached the Cyrillic literacy to the Latin one, and today's Russian letters we are using, this is something he created. But it's clear that at the beginning and at the end of the 17th, at the beginning of the 18th century, the cursive variation of the alphabet was something which was not established. And as Peter was saying that himself, that there were some handwritten characteristics depending on every person. Here behind me, you can see some of the examples of these letters. It's even for us, it's difficult to read without special preparation. And that is why we are so happy and so glad that we can represent today this wonderful project of artificial intelligence created together with three Russian organizations. This is the Russian Historical Society, one of the oldest and one of the most famous scientific organizations is the Foundation of Fatherhood. And one of the biggest Russian banks is Best Bank, and this project has been created together with these three Russian organizations. And this project was devoted to the recognition of Peter's handwritten texts. with the use of computer vision. And I'm so glad to present you our speakers today. We have Maria Evgenievna Proskurikova, senior researcher of the St. Petersburg Institute of History of the Russian Academy of Sciences, and PhD in science. And the other speaker is Denis Valerievich Dimitrov. He's the executive director on data research of Sber AI. From this high technology unit of Sberbank, which has developed this project. So I'm giving the floor, first of all, to our historian. Maria, the floor is yours. And then, on the basis of what we are going to hear, we'll hear of the new technologies. Denis Dimitrov will tell us about this. And please, if you have any questions, you are welcome to ask them. I'm sure that you'll have many questions by the end. You can use the chat at the bottom of your screen. And by the way, you can also raise your hand to ask a personal question if this is something that you prefer to ask questions. Maria, so I'm giving the floor to you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me to this event. Indeed, this year we are celebrating the 350th anniversary of Peter the Great. He was the first Russian emperor, and the interest to his personality and his contribution to the Russian history development has never decreased. And this year we have implemented several scientific projects for the memory of Peter. Peter the Great was born in 1672, and the coronation took place in 1682. And during the first years of his reign, he was with his brother, and only after the death of his brother in 1697, he was the only king. And in 1697, he left Russia for Europe to start political negotiations, to get acquainted to the Western culture. That was something sensational because no other Russian king had ever left the country. This event was called the Great Embassy. The plan was to visit Austria, Holland, Denmark, Brandenburg, and Venice and Rome. And the program of the Great Embassy was very vast, and I could say that being abroad, the Tsar was negotiating himself, and he was writing the letters to his to the other head of states. He was the one who was writing them, and Alexei Mikhailovich was someone who was very educated, but we only have 160 letters which was written by Alexei Mikhailovich, the other Tsarevich, and we have more than 5,000 documents who was written by Peter. He not only wrote letters to his inside cycle, but also he wrote letters to the European head of states. And being abroad, Peter changed a lot of the diplomacy because at the time, personal meetings was something very rare at the time. It was not something, it didn't make part of the everyday diplomacy practice. And Peter tried to have personal contacts and establish personal relations with the heads of states. And that was something that changed the tradition which existed before Peter. His goal was education. And even on his stamp, he used and to stamp his letters. It was written that I'm a student, I'm looking for teachers. And education, Peter's education was not limited by some applied knowledge. He was very interested in shipbuilding. He was interested in everything, starting from different professions, different hand professions, and he was very interested in different scientific institutions, and he was very interested in museums because it was something which was the source of knowledge, not only for today's generation, but for the future ones. He was interested in scientific devices, botanical gardens, and the impressions of the Tsar and of his generation had influenced the other development of the Russian culture and the Russian science. And after he got back from Europe, he started the reforms. He created secular schools and institutions, and he started preparing scientific specialists. So it was a very important moment. And the spiritual education got at the second plan. And he started to develop secular education and prepare the professionals in this field. The other trip Peter made, it was made in 1717. It was the second trip. In January of 1716, Peter and his wife Ekaterina left St. Petersburg, and they were going to visit Holland, Belgium, France, and of course, the main goal, at least one of the most important ones of this trip, was to create a wonderful capital out of St. Petersburg. And that is why Peter was paying a lot of attention to visit different cities and their sightseeing. He visited galleries in Antwerpen, he visited churches, and as soon as he visited them, he asked to buy some works of art he could buy. And a lot of Europeans were writing about that in the newspapers, and the society was very interested in Peter, and especially in his visit to Belgium. A lot of attention was paid in the Belgium media, in the newspapers. The people were interested of his visits, of the Kunstkamera. So Peter got acquainted with local engineers, and he invited them to come to Russia. And that was something which was remarked by the European society. During his second trip to Europe, Peter visited France, and he went to the Academy of Science and Observatory there. And he very soon got interested to create the same institutions in Russia. In 1724, he founded the Academy of Sciences in Russia, which is still existing, which still continues its work. And in 1725, he founded the Russian Astronomical Observatory. Of course, we need to say that Peter and his inner cycle had become the conductors of the ideas of the time, which determined the image of Russia and its history for the centuries to come. That was something which was done by him and by his inner cycle. I'd like to note that many of the documents of that time, which were written during those years in 1716 and 1717 and later, they haven't been published yet, and they are unknown to a larger cycle of researchers. The heritage of Peter is really important. It's really great and big, and it needs long and thorough work. And that work was started more than 150 years ago for the 200th anniversary of Peter. So it that was the time his first letters were, his letters were published. And this was the beginning of a larger work to recognize the documents written by Peter personally, by his secretary, the secretaries, according to the order he had given to them. And in 1887, the first volume was published, where the documents for several years were published for the period of 1688 to 1701. That work continued until 1917, until the revolution in Russia. And during that period, 6 volumes only could be published. And this work continued after the revolution, after the Second World War, but that and a lot of efforts were needed. And in 2022, the 14th volume was published. And in this volume, all the documents from January to July were collected there. So thus, for 150 years of work on those volumes, not all the documents have been published. For example, the materials for the 1810th and 1812th still need to be published.
So where is the problem here? Actually, to recognize and to read Peter the Great's document is quite a challenge, even among the experts. And of course, even more so for those who do not use all the historical tools. So what are the features, the particular manners of writing of Peter the Great? Well, first of all, there are no spaces between words. So when a professional, let's say, a writer of the manuscripts at those times made the documents, he also very usually did that, but spaces existed, but Peter the Great almost never used them. Then very often he reduced words to initial letters, like G for general. Moreover, he also reduced syllables in some words. Or he also used other types of reductions. Like, for example, he wrote consonants above the line, above the word. And the problem is that the symbols for consonants he used are very similar. Like for the letters N, S, and T, the symbols Peter the Great chose was pretty much the same. And it was quite difficult to know which actually letter is represented by this particular symbol. As for punctuation marks, Peter the Great almost never uses capital letters, uppercase letters, and there are also a lot of corrections. It seems like Peter the Great was always in a hurry, so there are a lot of words and lines and even paragraphs crossed out, new words and lines written above them. And Peter the Great also used a number of specific symbols. For example, a cross in a circle, which marked an addition or an insertion in the text. Just to show you some examples. So this is a page from Peter the Great's autograph. That's a letter of 1709. So we circled in red these reductions like the letter G, T, and Ki, and also these consonants which were written above the line marked in blue. Like you see the first line, the first string, you can see many of them, but the first and the second symbol look quite similar, but actually they represent two different letters, T for the first case and the letter N for the second. As you may see, those texts, those scripts are very hard to read. It's quite a challenge. In 2020, a big joint scientific project was initiated with the participation of Russian Historical Society, Sberbank, and St. Petersburg Institute of History. So it was decided to put in place an algorithm that would allow to decipher, to read Peter the Great's autographs. This project had two goals. So the first one was to create a database of those texts, and so the second one was to publish them, to publish all those materials, all those handwritten autographs, to put them together, and then to publish for the larger public. So in order to create this algorithm, St. Petersburg Institute of History created a working group among history experts, specialist experts in the times of Peter the Great, and more specifically handwritten scripts, manuscripts of the 17th and 18th centuries. The head of this project group was Tatiana Bazarova, head of the Scientific and Historical Archive and a group of source studies. And Denis Dimitrov was the head of the project from Sberbank. So the work was launched in a very close cooperation in order to put in place some principles and rules of text transcribing. The rules of historians, which they use in order to decipher professional texts, were not useful, were not sufficient for this particular project. In order to decipher those texts, we needed something more efficient. So we had to put our professional rules that were used before aside and create something new. So it was decided to put spaces, restore them between words. At the same time, all the reduced words remained unchanged. Capital letters were not replaced. Punctuation marks and line breaks were not replaced either. We inserted all the letters in the line, which were written by Peter the Great above the line. And we also used the letters, the ancient letters that were used in the ancient version of Cyrillic alphabet, but are not used anymore. We put in the text back again all the words and phrases and lines which were crossed out, and those that were written on the margins were put at the end of the text. And of course, we also chose the special symbols for handwritten symbols used by Peter the Great to mark an insertion like the same cross in a circle. So the work had two steps. At the first step, the text was transcribed line by line. And at the second step, second stage, those autographs were analyzed and corrected. So you can see an example of the final result. More than 10,000 lines were marked up like that. And then those lines, those strings, were used by the IT specialists to create the algorithm. So here you see the page from the website of Sberbank, which you can use as well. You can download the document if you want. So there is a very short description of how this algorithm works with some examples. You can see the pages from the manuscripts. On the second page, you can download your document, the manuscript of Peter the Great. So the recognition itself takes around 5 seconds, but your file should not exceed 15 megabytes. That's the only restriction. So you have to wait 5 seconds, and then the algorithm will transcribe this image, this page, and if you choose a particular line, it will be also highlighted in the text. At the same page, you can click on the button download a new document, or you can save the transcripted document on your computer in the format docs. And you will have the image of the autographs and the recognized text. We tried to assess the quality of such transcription, of this recognition. So this document, this particular example, comes from these 10,000 lines which were analyzed and used to train the algorithm. So here you can see the results of this quality assessment. So the sample contains 365 letters, and only 9 letters were misinterpreted, misrecognized. Like the letter A instead of the letter E, and some other errors, some other mistakes. But from the very beginning, I should say that those errors are very easy to correct. Like you can put a space between letters or erase a space. Otherwise, all the letters are fine. It gives you the reading accuracy of more than 97%. On the next slide, you can see you can see 2 similar texts. The first one recognized by artificial intelligence, and the second by a human being, by an expert. So as you can see, it's really easy to correct. As I said, you just change a couple of letters or some inaccuracies that occurred during the machine recognition. So after this part of the project was achieved, the algorithm was created. We passed to the second one, which is still in work. So we are trying to put in place a website, a portal with a collection of Peter the Great's documents. By now, we have 140 of his handwritten texts. That's the front page. Then you can see the list of all the documents which are already in the system on this website, grouped by years. You can see there is only one document from 1707 and many for 1708. And then you can click on a particular document and read, for example, the letter of Peter the Great to Fedor Apraxin. February the 21st, 1709. So on the left, you can see the image of Peter's autograph, and on the right, you can see the digital recognition. And you can also see the page of the same autographs as it was deciphered by humans, by history specialists in 1950. And to compare, so the work, the results of the colleagues and the machine. So we still work on this portal. Today, it contains only the recognized documents, which were published already, and many 3 or 4 of them which have not been published yet. So on this slide, I would like to give you some sources, some articles on the subject, on his grand embassy in Europe. You can see the article of Tatiana Bazarova, for instance. Thank you for your attention. I would like to finish on that. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Let's hope that this presentation will be available for the public for, let's say, further studies. Because, yes, it's very interesting. You spoke quite quickly, and I'm sure that our interpreters did not interpret everything, every detail in your speech. So our conference today is recorded. It will be available on our YouTube channel of the Russian House in Brussels. So our public, those who are with us today, and well, many others, I hope, maybe will like to, read it again and study more in details. And we have the first question already, which I would like actually to ask to Dennis. So your program aims only at deciphering the script of Peter the Great, or it's more universal? Well, what you can find on the website, which Maria has just showed you, yes, it's dedicated only to recognition of Peter the Great's script, but the same method, the same algorithm can be used to recognize any handwritten text, any cursive text. And I will talk more in details about that. You can ask your questions on our chat to Maria or to Dennis. So please feel free to share, to give your feedback or to comment. And after Dennis' presentation, we will try to answer them. Okay, so I start full screen presentation. Hello. So I will briefly present myself. I'm Denis Dimitrov. I'm head of a group in department AI in Sber. So we work with all kinds of projects of artificial intelligence, and I'm also research consultant in the Institute IRON, which is a joint project with Sberbank. So what I will share with you today, it's the history of this algorithm, how it was created. It was actually created in 2020. We launched the competition, but let's start from the beginning. So I will not repeat what Maria just said. Peter the Great is really a very important personality, a great figure in Russian history, but international history as well. And it was a surprise for me to find out how many people abroad know who Peter the Great is. And how many monuments there are to Peter the Great in the Belgium itself. As for Russia, Peter the Great contributed a lot in terms of the evolution of the lifestyle, of the centuries, of the history, of the culture. And for Sber, it was a very particular project. So we were very enthusiastic about it from the very beginning, and we are quite happy with the results. So we joined the project at the moment when our colleagues from St. Petersburg Institute of History had already a vision of what they wanted what kind of texts they wanted to recognize, because the script of Peter the Great has changed over the years from his youth years and till the later stages of his life, and actually it got worse. It became much more illegible over the years. So we covered the documents coming from 1709 to 1713. 90% of all the documents account for this period. So the documents which were transferred to us by the colleagues of the Institute was a collection of such documents. CVAT, computer vision annotation tool, that was the program which we used. We, as the developers of the algorithm, we wanted to get such data, a kind of image, and then the translation of this image. And those pairs were used to train the algorithm, the artificial intelligence algorithm. As Maria said, almost 10,000 lines were marked up, which accounts for almost 700 pages, like a book, a volume of a book. So we developed the baseline ourselves, and we also launched a competition. A competition launched by Sberbank at the conference Journey, Artificial Intelligence Journey. Sber organizes this conference for 5 years. That's the biggest conference on artificial intelligence in Russia. So in 2020, we launched this competition, Digital Peter.
So we had the data which included about 10,000 lines, and we had to educate the algorithm to recognize a string and to which will make the transcription. And we were using those kinds of metrics which are very often used to recognize the handwritten text. So character rate can be interpreted as the percentage of the errors in recognition. So that is not exactly the percentage of the errors in the recognition of the symbols, but that is something which is close to that. If the character rate is equal to 0, that means that our algorithm has made no errors. It has been perfect in the documents and the lines we were recognizing. And here you have the collection of about 10,000 words. So during the training, we had about 7,000 lines, and during the test, we were using about 3,000 tests. So the test is the series of strings the participants cannot see. Why is this important? Because maybe someone who knows about science can write some comments in the chat. I will explain you why it is important. It is important because we cannot test the algorithm on the data we use to educate. It's the same thing as at school. Teachers could not give the tasks for the exam. This task must not be the same as the one which were used during the educational term. So, because a student can only learn a task and not understand anything in this task. So it's the same thing, the same process we were using for our educational processes. So this character rate was using 3,000 pairs, and the character rates of 2% means that 1 of 50, and that means 2 out of 100 was mistakenly recognized. That means that 98% was well recognized. That is a very good rate. That's a very good percentage. The rate is exact rate is 97.6. And I was talking with Maria Evgenievna, with Tatiana Anatolyevna, and other historians. And this kind of character rates can be compared to a student who knows very well his subject. We can call such a student a professional, for example, in polygraphy and in recognition of the text of a concrete person. In this is using computer vision, we can recognize the documents very fast. A historian who knows very well the handwriting and what he was writing about can recognize these documents in 20 minutes. And our algorithm with 100 words can decipher 800 pages within 20 minutes. So the speed is 100 times faster. So if we take many 70,000 characters, that means if the speed which will be much faster than if a person were deciphering. The same algorithms can be used to decipher every shorthand text, every stenography, every handwritten text of every person, of every famous person, and not only all the texts which you can find in archives. We wanted to start this project because in the Russian archives there are a lot of documents which nobody ever read. And this project is the first step to deciphering every handwritten text on the whole. And I'd like to tell you how this algorithm works. I'd like to see the comments if somebody knows about the computer education. So this is why I will not be very technical explaining you how everything works. The recognition algorithm consists of 5 steps. The first one, we have the document, which can be seen in our model. So these are some strings on a surface or whatever surface. What we are doing, first of all, the first step, we are processing this document. For example, it can be turned in this way, upturned. You can see the text here can be at different angles. This is the plan of the parade Peter drew. So we need to understand how do we need to turn the page to make everything in good disposition and good order. Then we make the search of the strings, and then we process those strings and we decode these strings after we have taken out the useful characters. First of all, we turn the page and we search for the strings. Scientifically, it is called segmentation task. So we need to find the strings and highlight them. It's a neuronal network, which is not so simple as we might think. So out of the whole page, we can have 13 lines. So this is the result of the first step. During the second step, we will take all the strings. In this case, we'll take the first one, first of all. And what happens next? We process this string to make its the standardized of size. And after that, after the normalization of the image, we will extract the characteristics by the neuronal network. So in the computer's memory, an image is a number of pixels. Everyone knows it. And if this image is in black and white, we'll have this big matrix where in every pixel a number is encoded. If, for example, 255, it's a white color, and then there is another number for the black color. If, for example, the number is 15, it's most likely to be black color. And if this image is colored, we have three channels for this: red, green, blue. I think you know about this. These are three channels every color is being decoded into. And every pixel will have three figures, for example, 354, 258, and every number will encode the intensity of every color. So, for example, imagine that you are drawing a painting, and you have some paint, and you take, for example, for 53 units of red color, for 234 you'll have of green color, and then for another number of blue color, and this thus you will have your final color out of those colors. Out of this matrix, which this matrix is the memory of the computer. And then you have very interesting operations. So it's kind of wrapping up operations. So you are going to take a matrix, which will be uploaded on a bigger matrix. Imagine this image. This is a black and white image, and we have, for example, colors from 0 to 1. 0 will be black color and 1 will be white color. And in this matrix, which would be the filter, you are going to use it on all the image from up to down to the down. You're going to add 1 multiplied by 0, and then you add 1 multiplied by 0, and you have 4. And using it for all this matrix, you will get a new matrix. What does it mean? Well, if you don't understand this science. So this means it's a filter. It's like an Instagram. If you take this picture and you will have this convolution kernel, this filter, and you will you will do this operation I've been talking about, you will get this kind of image. This is an edge detector, the detector of the borders, which are very important for an image, because the borders play the key role, and that is why the camel process is very important. The neuronal network, which is doing this consequence of evolution, to make different images thanks to these processes. And finally, you will get a big number of figures which don't mean anything for you. But for the neural network, these filters are very important. For example, in some tasks, it's very important to define the borders, and in other tasks, these kind of borders are not important. And this kind of features can be done using these processors. For example, if using this convolutional neural network, you will use for this image of this car in different layers of this convolution. You will have different features responsible for the lines. For example, like here for every round figures, which are also very important. And finally, you will get a vector, which is very important from the informational point of view. For example, why is it important? We need to understand where's the cat and where is the dog. And intuitively, you can think that you can describe a feature which can define where you can have a cat, where you can have a dog. For example, you can say that you can describe that the animal has red ears, but you can find a lot of dogs with red ears. So this is not something not a feature you can define your image. So that is why it's important to have this kind of processing vectors. You have here 255 vectors in this picture. They are encoded very important characteristics using different figures. And thus they are encoding information which you can find in this image here on the left. So every line will mean one letter in the string, because the letters follow each other and the characteristics follow each other. And who is attentive will see that we have 255 vectors, but we can have as many letters as you want. We can have 10 letters. For example, we have the letter Peter, the first. We can have 100 letters, yet we encode as long as we need, and every vector will be associated with a letter. Why so? Because 255 is the maximal length of the line, and for example, several vectors will be encoding the same letter. For example, here we'll have the letter O in the first one, and then we'll have the letter K in the next ones. Then we are going to process these features by the recurrent neural network, which will set up the order. It will let us understand that after the letter R, we won't have another letter R. We would have a vowel after that. So this processor takes into account the sequence of the letters. And in those vectors which we've got after the recurrent transformations, we will have the probability of the letters. For example, if after the letter O we have 090, that means that it is a letter O, and that means that the first three ones will be encoding the letter O, and the two others will be encoding the letter T, etc. And that is how we are deciphering. This is how we are restoring the characteristics, and this is how we decipher the word out of the image. But that is not enough for now, because maybe we were mistaken, or some characteristics were mistaken, or maybe the sequence of the letters was mistaken. We need to improve the quality, and we can get it using the language model obtained by the learning of the languages of the 17th century to correct and For example, we have missed a letter ya, Russian letter ya, and this model would edit this letter ya into the word. The truth is that this method doesn't work all the time because Peter worked with mistakes. He was writing very fast. He was making abbreviations, and he didn't have any rules he followed. Yet, in some cases, this model can help. Well, this is all the algorithm. This is how it all works. Yet there are some two interesting moments. How could we improve the quality? Because this kind of algorithm has the quality rate of 90, and to get the quality rate of 87.6 as we have now, we created algorithm of augmentation. We had only 7,000 lines for the education, and we could understand how can we use this set, how can we widen this set, not asking Maria to help us, because we understand that her work is very this kind of segmentation work is very difficult. The first augmentation was a simulation of the crossings out. We remarked that Peter, has been an impulsive person, crossed out a lot of things. And Maria Evgenievna can correct me, but I was looking at that set, and in 25% of the strings, there were at least one crossing out. For example, Peter didn't like something, he crossed it out, and then he wrote it again. And if we cross out the strings which were not crossed out, that improves the quality. And we at the same time had to understand which letter was that. And that improved the quality. And if we add this string to the string which has not crossed out, we would have, for example, 20 lines, 20 strings at the end instead of 6. We would improve the quality, and I will show you how and at which point. And another thing is the generation of the handwriting Peter had. We have an algorithm which recognizes the algorithm of Peter the Great, so it can create a text out of the image.
So then we can actually see which fragments of the image is encoded. So then we can also make a segmentation of our string in letters. And if we can divide the string in the line in letters, it means that we can get a data set of letters and then put those letters together and get a new phrase, a new line. So why this is an augmentation? Because it allows us to generate any phrase we want. Let's say, I don't know, hello, I'm Peter the Great. I give the conference at a Russian-Belgian meeting. Why not? You can generate such a phrase, you can add it to the training data set, and that will improve the quality. So instead of 20,000 lines, we have 50,000 lines, you know. So of course, it gets the quality better. We actually tried different tools, different strategies. This is not Peter the Great script, but otherwise we generated the first chapter of Harry Potter in Peter's script. This is another data set. You know, we can simulate any handwriting we want. This is Harry Potter written by Washington, the US president. And here we have some links. I will give you links. So as Maria said, you can scan our QR code, which will get you to our recognition platform. Then there is this website created by the St. Petersburg History Institute, which is a kind of an electronic archive which will collect Peter's manuscripts. You also have a QR code which you can scan and get to this front page. Another website in Russian language, which can actually generate Peter the Great's handwriting. So you can type a text, a phrase you want, and you will have it generated on a paper in the format of image. And now I would like to add something about the metrics. So if you see the results for Digital Peter website, so stack mix, how much those augmentations actually add up, contribute to the final quality. So without augmentation, SER is 4.44. It means that gives you the percentage of error. So if we add up to that automatic augmentation, it gives us the figure 2.5. So it's lesser by half. We tried out this algorithm on different data sets. Bentham, an English philosopher of the 18th, 19th century. I am. It's English language data set of handwritten English texts. Saint Gall, Latin text of the 9th century. Blots, those are simulations of crossed out parts, which helps us to minimize the error. So we presented those results at the conferences. As we said, Peter the Great crossed out a lot of things, but even for the data sets which we have a lesser number of crossing out, this augmentation also helps because it also increases the quality of the recognition. And now I would like to present the new developments which we plan for the future. Of course, our goal is to be able to recognize any handwritten text, any documents which are contained in our archives. The problem is 90% of those documents have never been read. They are simply collected in the archives. For example, there is this collection, Landgradsky Books and Revision Tales, containing more than 5 million pages with genealogies. So, you know, data about genealogy families of many people in Russia. So if someone wants to find out some information about his ancestors, he would have to go to the archive by himself and to deal with those 18th, 19th century texts. So our idea here is to make those texts digital and then to recognize them. So according to the estimates, more than 100 million pages of handwritten texts remain undeciphered. And of course, it's hard to believe that these amounts will ever be recognized. But if it is not only scanned, but digitalized and then uploaded to a website, we will need new models of the artificial intelligence, because we don't have the needed number of historians, specialists, and that would be too boring for them to recognize those amounts of pages. We actually launched, we already begun the work at the same time as we developed our project on Peter the Great. So as the first document, we took the acts of mandatory work. I don't know actually if the translation is correct. This is a collection of administrative acts of the 70s, 18th centuries. So this trained model already recognized more than 95% of characters. The algorithm we made allowing to recognize Peter's handwriting actually also is suitable for any other handwritten text, because this model knows how to read an understandable script, and you need only 10 or 20 lines now to train the same algorithm to the same model. And to compare our project to its Western equivalent, the project is called Transcribus. It was developed with the help of the European Union. But I have to say that it's quite bad when it comes to recognition of Cyrillic texts. It deals quite well with ancient English text, but it's quite bad for Cyrillic. So that was our goal in particular. And another remark, we have different models on handwriting recognition more generally. Like, the formulas. Mathematics are quite specific. You can only write mathematics in formulas, and that means a very particular text format. So right now we are developing such algorithm as well. Well, I would say that I covered most of the information I wanted to present. I don't know if I have some time left. Yes, Dennis, we have time. But we would ask you not to go further into technical details. Yes, sure. I can show you some funny pictures if you like. Yeah, funny pictures are always good. Why not? Okay, we also carry out a research project like in parallel to that, but also quite interesting. So Kandinsky, which could generate images based on the description. So you describe an image in Russia, and the algorithm, the program, generates a picture. Like you see, winter landscape, Russian cities by a Russian artist, and the program gives you such samples. Google Brain, based on the technology of DeepMind, also developed something like that, which is the advantage of our product. It's accessible, it's open to the public, it has been trained on a larger amount of data sets of samples, and the program actually is quite efficient when it comes to establishing the associations between description and the image. Soup with a cat. A soup with a cat. Of course, when you try to translate it, it doesn't really work because it's a Russian neural network. But this example just shows you that this neural network is also capable to combine the notions which are not combinable, let's say. Rudolf, another project, can also generate images based on the text description. So you have any kind of text input, and then it gets you the image. This network is similar to Rudolph. But you can use another approach, quite different from all these convolutional algorithms. You can use neural networks which generates images, but also for recognizing the text. It takes only 5 hours of training instead of 10 days, and it uses fewer parameters to get you a higher quality. Scientist cat. Another example to show you that you can really generate anything you want. Yeah, some fun for you. Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. Yeah, quite interesting. To me, it's really extraordinary, very professional presentation. Yeah. You won us over by your work. It's really great that Sberbank has such projects with such leaders and scientists, researchers as yourself. That's really high science, high technologies. So thank you very much for all the information you shared with us. It's a true inspiration, I think. Thank you. And it also true about Maria and her presentation as well. So it's great to have such a project in Russia. I'm happy to see that it is developing quite well and has really great prospects. I have many questions, and we have a couple of those on our chat. I think you have already answered it in a way. So what are you waiting for? How do you see this innovation project in the future? Yeah, so you have the archives already, and not only archives, but also research institutes want actually to put in place a joint archive for any handwritten texts. So why not? I think that will be a very useful tool, and it can be done. You can recognize anything you want. Well, anything you want, of course, there are manuscripts you can't read at all, but the majority of handwritten texts are quite recognizable. Well, you said many times cursive script. Now, what does it mean? Cursive writing. It means writing with abbreviations or with errors or some, invented letters or symbols. But if we talk about, a real normal writing, can you use your technologies? Yes, sure. If they allow to recognize incorrect writing, it also good, even more so for normal writing. Any Russian writing for any Russian person, I would say, would be much easier than recognizing Peter the Great's one. You also mentioned the Western algorithm, Western equivalent, Transcribus. But your project, can it also recognize Latin scripture? Yeah, I think, of course, it's the only problem and the only question actually is which data sets you use for training. Of course, we can recognize Latin texts. Yeah, I've shown you the table with the results with many different data sets. like English texts, Latin texts, and we tested our algorithm on them, and the accuracy was more than 90% as well. And it all depends on the goal, on what you want to get. Our focus was on the Cyrillic alphabet, and Latin texts were facultative in some way. Maria, we don't have much time left, but I still would like to ask you some questions. So speaking of this great technology presented by Dennis, what are your projects? What are your thoughts about it as the History Institute? So do you think, do you will to continue, use this algorithm to research about Peter the Great or in other projects? Yeah, so, we had a really positive feedback from this joint work with our colleagues from Sberbank. We think that this program can be used for different historical times for many historical personalities like Sheremetyev or other figures, important figures and personalities in Russian history with also quite difficult handwritings. So that would be maybe our first goal. And then maybe also apply this algorithm for the texts of the 17th century. We have a lot of them in our archives. They are still not studied, still not read. It is also difficult to process those documents, because every administrative body, let's say, had at that time his own way to write to write those documents. So you can really spend your life on deciphering only one set of documents, but if you want to compare it with another, it needs, another human life. So that algorithm would really help.
So in monastery books, it's very important to use because there are millions of pages with very typical the same information. And now we have a whole school which is direct in our institute, which are publishing those documents, and a lot of this information has been published. And if we had this algorithm, that would be very helpful to us. So thanks to this technology, we can have a new look at our own history of the 17th and 18th century, and not only, but to begin with. So that is something fantastic. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that in Russia, the 17th and earlier centuries have been not learned well enough from the documentary point of view. I agree with you. The main is that this period is very important, the creation of the Russian centralized state, when the centralized authorities are being created from the Irkutsk region into the other regions, in which is being documented by the bureaucrats, which group has been sent where to open new territories. Everything is being documented and conserved in thousands of pages. That is a fantastic story. When we find time to read all of this, this is like you are reading a detective story. That is very interesting for a normal for everyone, for every person. I think that the 17th century, the Russian 17th century, is not very well known by a usual person, a normal person, but that is a very important century of our history, because we used to think that Catherine the Great was the one who created the Russian state in the sense of territoriality, and that is not true. The main configuration of the Russian state were created with under Alexei Mikhailovich. And we don't know much about that because we don't have many documents being known to the general public. And I think, Denise, your technology will help us, the Russians, and not only the Russians, I hope, to have a new look to our own history. And that is the main result. Denise, tell us, please. Would you agree with me? Yes, absolutely. So you are not scared by the task. No, I'm only being inspired by it. When I was listening to you, I had a feeling, and also when I was listening to Maria, I had the same feeling that we need to have some more meetings, to organize some more events, to maybe talk about some other aspects of your technology. And we could also organize a masterclass with you to be able to use those neural networks you were talking at the end of your presentation. Yeah, with great pleasure. Yes, that's possible. And Maria, and with you, we would like maybe to discuss some other periods with the use of the documents you are going to decode thanks to this wonderful technology. And first of all, I would like to share a thought, a reflection with you, which is also a question for you both. The matter is that Belgium is not only a country where the biggest number of monuments to Peter the Great out of Russian borders you can find here, is a country with a very rich legacy of the first Russian immigration, of the immigration after the revolution of the 1917 revolution, because normally we know about a lot of immigration to France, to Germany, to Serbia, to Tunisia, and few people know that Belgium was and still has a lot of immigrants of the first wave, and more than 10,000 people, according to some estimations, remained in Belgium after the revolution, and their next generation still live in Belgium, and they feel as the representatives of the Russian culture, and they have their own archives, and there are a lot of these archives. And in the Russian house, periodically, and especially that was very active before the pandemics, we were helping to copy, would not even say to decode, digitalize, sorry. We were copying all these archives being kept in families in order to conserve all those documents for our history. And could you tell us, please, if we can use your technology and your potential, although I understand that is something which must be done by the House in Moscow. Can you take care of this part of the Russian documents? Maria, can you start first, and then I will give you my comments. So please start first. Well, I can speak about the possibilities to include these documents in the big database of the literacy history. We have a big project which is being financed by the Ministry of science and education, and we are coming back to implement the idea which were created by the academician Likhachev to represent the history of writing in Europe, starting from when the writing was born. And now we are being limited by the 19th century too. So within our database, we have some documents from the Western Europe and a lot of documents written in Cyrillic. We have different acts, different manuscripts of the book, and we have a lot of documents of 19th century. And this part is being led by Vladimir Likoyanov, and he is going to represent the series of these documents for the nomenclature. Different acts, different invitations to different balls, different parties, and we are going to include those documents in the database as examples of the writing. And maybe these documents could be included in the database. If we can find some interesting documents, we won't refuse to include them. Yes, I agree. Everyone wants to make them public. I agree. And maybe we can use this idea to develop it further. And that means that these are being documents of the 20th centuries. Yes, that's correct. These are handwritten documents from the 20th centuries. These are the different handwritings and within a family. Yes, these are letters being written by people. These some documents, I think we can try to decipher them, because the 20th century was quite modern, I can say. It's not a cursive. Yeah, the people were with good level of education. Yes, I understand that this is a simple language with different, maybe old ancient word, but on the whole, this is modern alphabet. Before the last reform of the 1920s. Yes, so this can be deciphered. This can be deciphered with the use of the existing algorithm. Maybe the quality won't be very high. Maybe some letters will be missing. For example, the letter ER, Russian, it doesn't exist anymore. So we can train the algorithm to do that. That's wonderful. This if Peter heard you now, I think he would be delighted, because he loved technologies, and everywhere he appeared, he wanted to understand the technology, the technological part of the object. And here in the Russian House, we are preparing the project which is called the Belgian Roots of Peter the Great. It tells about his trip in 1716, when he spent in Belgium about 2 months using this, learning this about this trip. We understand that the first thing what he did, he was learning the technological side of a phenomena. When he went to the Antwerpen church, he wanted to measure with a rope the height of the church. So this is why, of course, Peter would be delighted if he knew that kind of technology for him, and thanks to him, was created. Unfortunately, we need to finish our event, because our time is limited, and we hope that we'll be able to organize these kind of events later. We would like to thank our speakers, our organizers, our colleagues from the Russian Historical Society. from the foundation of the history of the fatherhood from the Sberbank. So Maria Evgenieva Proskorikova has been with us. She's the senior researcher from the Institute of Scientists of the Russian Academy of Sciences, and Denis Dimitrov, the executive director of data research of Sber AI, and who is the author and the enthusiast of the project Digital Pizza. And I'd like to finish our meeting with a philosophical conclusion I've made out of the presentation of Denis. To complicate the work raises the quality of the work. I think that is something we need to use in our